Welcome everyone to this another episode of Ancient History of Bharat. We are in the age of the Upanishads. Um, uh, in a way, Upanishads are, like I said in many of my previous videos, Upanishads were the culmination of the Vedic thought. Okay, Upanishads, in a way, was the epitome, not exactly epitome, but the highest philosophical thought of the Aryanhood. Okay, and it has been very beautifully articulated in the Upanishads. It is said widely, and it is accepted amongst all the historians and the scholars of Bharat that if you really want to study, okay, if you want to study the history and culture of this country, and if you want to understand what exactly is the idea of Bharat, okay, you can simply just go through the Upanishads. And in a way, it is also one of the sacrificial duties. Okay, we have covered this in our previous videos. There are 5 sacrificial duties that are impressed upon you if you are born as a national of Bharat. Okay, and one of those 5 duties that you're supposed to do every single day is one of them is the study of the Vedas. Okay, Vedas in a way are the intellectual legacy that has been bequeathed upon us by our ancestors. Okay, so let's not lose track of who we are and where do we come from, because when we do that, okay, our future will get very blurry. We will lose focus from reality. Okay, so it is very important for you to study these things, for you to know these things, and hence this is my teeny tiny effort, because like I said, one lifetime isn't sufficient enough for you to completely understand this holy land of Bharat, because there is always going to be something that you will not know, be it the darshan shastras, be it any specific history of a specific area for a specific individual. There is always going to be something that you will miss. Okay, hence it is a lifelong process. For those of you who are watching this series, and like one of the reasons why I started this series was because I was pretty much I was done with the history being taught, the way history is being taught in our schools, because it's not truly honest. Okay, the history that we learn in our school, or the I don't know what is being taught in our schools in the name of history and culture, but it's blatant lies. Okay, and even the textbooks are no better. Even the reference books that we get in our markets, even they themselves do not teach real history. Okay, so it is very difficult for you to get genuine sources of history. Even the book that I refer to, this is the Vedic Age by R.C. Majumdar. It's a series of, I guess, 11 books. It's a series of 11 books, and so far from what I've understood from this reading this book, is it is totally based upon the Aryan migration theory, meaning the inhabitants of this country are not exactly aboriginals. They were the people who came from outside. Okay, by the way, that has been completely disapproved. Okay, whoever might the Aryans have been, okay, their organic origin was on the holy land of Bharat. Okay, me, you, and all the people who have chosen not to convert to any of the monotheistic traditions, you are still within the umbrella of Aryanhood. Okay, all right, having said that, today we are going to focus on the law and legal institutions during the Upanishads. Okay, law in a way is some sort of a deterrent, meaning what is stopping you from going outside and let's say randomly killing people. Number one is obviously common sense. That is not something that you should do, but there are laws in place. Okay, there are strict rules, there is policing, there are courts, and hence you are I wouldn't know if reluctant is the correct word. Hence you are reluctant to go outside and start killing people randomly, because there will be some serious repercussions. Okay, only if you're rich, okay, you can escape the clause of the law, and that too even if you are ultra rich. Okay, but for a commoner, for the bourgeoisie, the middle class, because majority of the people in this country who follow law, okay, they come from the middle class. You'll observe that the traffic police, they usually don't stop the rich people, because it wouldn't make a difference. Even if they stop them, they will simply just pay the fine and you know carry on with their lives. But it is the middle class person who toils hard to earn the money, and who will request the police officer to please let them go if they've forgotten their helmets and whatnot. And hence this is something that the traffic police enjoy, people begging them to let them go. Okay, but not like whatever I say, it's not generalized, it's not for everyone. Okay, but I would say largely, okay, I'm sorry to say this, but largely police officers are, one way or the other where they have to compromise. Okay, all right. So law and legal institutions, similarly it is Dharma Sutras that we find the real beginnings of civil and criminal law. Okay, there are two distinctions. Civil law, as in, let's say if there is a property dispute, okay, then that will be dealt with under civil law. Let's say somebody on the street started shooting people or committed a murder, so that will be dealt under the criminal laws. Okay, so in Dharma Sutras they mention some sort of rudimentary distinction between civil and criminal laws. The Veda, the tradition, Smriti, and the practice of those who know the Veda are said to be the threefold sources of law, each evidently being superior to the one mentioned later. Okay, so there were three sources of law. How exactly are you supposed to formulate or legislate laws? Okay, so the Vedas, obviously, number one, they were the source of all authority. So if you are going to formulate or legislate any law, your inspiration must come from the Vedas. That is number one. Number two was tradition. This is a very contestable term right now. Okay, now there will be people outside who will say that if you talk about tradition, then sati had been a tradition since very long. Why did we abolish it? We abolished it in the name of humanity, because you cannot let females simply just hurl themselves at the pyre of their husband and call it quits on their lives just because the husband had died. All right, so there were certain traditions that were against basic notions of humanity, and hence we did away with them. We have no shame in admitting that yes, there are certain things about our faith that are were not very progressive, hence we got rid of them. Okay, they are not part. In some of the isolated pockets of this country, all these things might still be practiced, but they do not, like I said, an exception does not disapprove the rule. So just because it is being practiced in some isolated corner of this country, that does not mean that every other person wants to do this. Okay, in fact, there are many practices. Dowry has been legally banned, but it still continues as a tradition amongst people. But if the person who is giving dowry and the person who is receiving dowry, if the both of them do not have any problem, who are we to meddle in their internal affairs? Okay, but legally, yes, it has been banned. So there is a sufficient safeguard for people who who are vulnerable to such exploitation through such practices. So there are laws in place. Okay, so that is number two, tradition. And tradition based on what? Tradition based on the scriptures of the Aryans. Those are the traditions on which you can formulate laws. Those are the standard of authority. That is what you can compare things with. If you are confused if a certain thing should be allowed to stay in practice, or should a certain practice be abolished, okay, which is the standard that you compare it with? Okay, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and obviously the traditions, the Smriti that has been carried on orally. Okay, that is number two. Number three is practice of those who know the Vedas, meaning all the learned people, okay, who were supposed to be the societal and social role models. Okay, I have sufficiently covered this in our previous videos. People who are well versed in Vedas, as well as they who were consciously in touch with their martial spirit. Okay, these were the two qualities that were mandated for you to become a societal role model. Okay, simply just being intelligent enough or simply just being strong enough was not enough. You had to have better of both the worlds. Okay, so these were the three sources of law. There is something more controversial as well in this chapter on page number 493. R.C. Majumdar, he writes, if authorities of equal force are conflicting, either may be followed at pleasure. Okay. Now let's say there is this very famous dialogue in Batman. I don't remember exactly which part, but there's a dialogue. This is what happens when a very large force meets an immovable object. Some sort of a comparison between Joker and Batman. Joker is supposed to be an immovable object, and Batman is supposed to be an very strong force. So when both of them meet, what would happen? So here and R.C. Majumdar, he says that in such situations when both the authorities of both the equal parties are tied in a conflict, it would depend on the situation. That is what the Aryan Hood says. Next up is heinous crimes such as theft, homicide, causing abortion, adultery, etc. These were supposed to be very heinous and punishable. Okay, interesting enough, abortion was punishable. So this entire narrative of female feticide. Now I'm not denying the existence of it. Obviously, there are some isolated pockets in this country where female feticide was practiced as recent as few decades ago. Okay, but if in the Upanishads, if abortions were considered heinous crimes, okay, you can tell a lot about a society based upon what they consider to be heinous crimes. Okay, so if they are considering abortion as a heinous crime, okay, so where did this idea of female feticide come from? Okay, it might have been a later age perversion. I'm not denying it. I'm not saying it did not exist. I'm simply saying, is it something organic to our faith? Has it always been practiced, or was it a later age phenomenon? Okay, don't simply believe something just because the media tells you so or your history textbooks tell you so, especially related to the culture and history of Bharat. Okay. It seems to have been permissible for the king to delegate his judicial authority, or at least the supervision of punishments, to a royal officer or a Rajanya who could act as an Adhyaksh. Okay. Now this is something I also want to talk about, as judiciary as an arm of the state was not divorced from the executive the way it currently is. Okay. In our country, Supreme Court and all, largely Supreme Courts and High Courts, I would not dare speak about the lower judiciary because there are other factors involved in lower judiciary as well. But let's just talk about the High Courts and the Supreme Courts. Okay, the appointment of judges. Okay, that has been very controversial. There has been much debate about it. How exactly are these judges appointed? To whom are the judges accountable? Because then you will say, no, judges are accountable to the parliament. How many judges have been impeached so far in our country's history? Okay, so in a way, that is acting as an incentive for a judge to espouse any of the political ideologies, as long as the sitting judge is okay with is in good books with the ruling party. Because if a judge has to be impeached, okay, there is some larger majority of voting required in the parliament. I'm not really sure. I guess it has to be 2/3 or whatever. Okay, but yes, some considerable amount of majority is required in the parliament for you to impeach the judges, at least the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court. Okay, so if a sitting judge is in good books of the ruling party, why would they impeach him or her? Now this would act as an incentive. Okay, the ruling party can simply just threaten that judge that, see, I have a majority, hence I can easily impeach you. So you'll do what I tell you to do. Okay. Difficult cases were referred to the Parishad, so let me just finish that point further. Yes, in the older days, during the days of the Upanishads, the judiciary was not exclusively separated from the state. Okay, in fact, being impartial judgments was one of the fundamental duties of the executive, that is the king. Okay, king was supposed to be the executive. So justice as a function wasn't different from the state. Let me just finish this coffee of mine. The Vashishta Dharma Sutra mentions cases of manslaughter where the slayer commits no crime by killing an assassin. Okay, I had if you killed somebody who is an assassin, you will not get such a harsh punishment. That is written on page number 494. In general, the discriminatory penalties and punishments laid down for the Sudras make a painful reading. Yes, this is something that we must acknowledge and we must not brush it under the carpet. Okay, the last Varna, that is Sudras, okay, they had the bitter end of the deal. Okay, I will not brush it under the carpet because it is not convenient to talk about it. Yes, okay, there were harsh punishments for people who belonged to the lower Varnas. Okay, and it has been very elaborately dealt with in the Upanishads, and R.C. Majumdar himself has written it that it makes for a painful reading. There are some offenses for which a higher Varna person would not be punished and that person would pass unscathed. Okay, and for the same crime a Sudra will be punished. Okay, and it could also be a capital punishment. So yes, there were historical wrongs that were done, and I'm not shy of admitting it. A drinker of spirituous liquor is to drink boiling liquid until he dies. Okay, so drinking of alcohol, consumption of alcohol was also one of the serious offenses. Okay, we have also covered this in one of my previous videos, that consumption of alcohol was largely, it was believed that if you consume alcohol, it would drive away from your penance, whatever penance that you are undertaking, whatever moral or ethical journey that you are undertaking. If you consumed alcohol, it would drive you away from it. Okay. The law of manslaughter shows that in spite of the public organization of criminal justice during the Sutra period, the system of private vengeance was moderated, was still in force. Okay, now this is something that is very interesting. Private vengeance. Okay, there were conditions, circumstances under which you were allowed, okay, to take the law into your own hands. When the aggrieved party thought, okay, that whatever wrong that was done to him or her, that person reserves the right for private vengeance or personal vengeance. But there was some check as well. There was an authority that goes by the name of Veradeya. Okay, he or she, whoever occupied that position, it's highly likely that it was a he. Okay, although the crime of murdering a Brahmana is too heinous to be expiated, 1000 cows constitute as a compensation for 1000 cows constitute as a compensation for the killing of a Kshatriya, 100 cows in the case of a Vaishya, and 10 cows for killing a Sudra. Okay, it is very much elaborate throughout the Upanishads that what was the punishment. Okay, the cows are apparently to be a compensation to the relations of the murdered man, so that they may not press for the punishment of death to the offender. Okay, now this in a way gives you let me explain it to you in a way that you will understand. If you have seen this television series of Suits, okay, this very popular character of Harvey Specter, in that TV series, yes, he has a dialogue. Okay, don't go to the court if you know you're not going to win. Okay, you simply settle outside the court. Now that was something that was practiced during the age of the Upanishads. Whenever there was a crime that was committed, the concerned parties would sit and talk about compensation, and hence the person who was guilty, okay, would escape the capital punishment. Okay. Next is the whole matter of inheritance is rather vague. There being no universal law regulating it, different rules are given by the various texts and legal authorities, and they were evidently authoritative in different localities or families. Okay. Now again, one more topic that is very controversial is inheritance. Okay. I would suggest you talk about this with the elders in your family. If there are any elders in your family, talk to them about inheritance. Okay. So and also increase the sample space, not just your home, your friends, okay, your close relatives, near and dear ones. Also talk to elders in their family. Okay, you will surprised to know, because what is largely believed, okay, in a patriarchal society like Bharat, okay, it is largely believed that women stood no chance at inheritance. But if you talk to these peoples in your family and even in your surroundings, you will realize, okay, there are multiple cases of women, okay, daughters in your family, daughters and sisters getting a part of inheritance. Okay, so that is again what the Upanishads say. Okay, they are not very clear cut about the system of inheritance. Different rules are given by various texts and legal authorities, and they were evidently authoritative in different localities or families. The lending business, therefore, was a sort of monopoly of the Vaisyas. Okay, since the Vaisyas, the third Varna, and when I say third, I don't mean in a hierarchical form. It was never hierarchical. I'm simply saying third because it is, written third. So the lending business, the business of finance, okay, lending money and extracting interest out of the money that was lent, was an exclusive monopoly of the Vaisyas. All right, that's all for this chapter. We end this chapter over here. The next chapter is chapter number 26, Religion and Philosophy of the Upanishads. We are going to cover that chapter in our next video. Okay, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.